So welcome to this free webinar on thriving in life versus merely surviving in life. I'm Melanie Green. I'm an occupational psychologist and I run Inspire Transformation. And I work as a coach, trainer and workplace mediator. And I specialize in two main areas of work. One is around resilience in life and in work. So managing pressures so we don't get stressed. And the other is around being able to work effectively with each other, communicate effectively, have those difficult conversations, not fear conflicts, etc. Be able to say no and negotiate priorities, etc. And I have been running my business for 30 years and I've been doing free webinars for a number of years. But in the last 6 months, I've been doing them with other people and really enjoying that. So I met Sara in person a number of years ago at a business network. And I really like her kind of approach to health and fitness. And we both say the same thing. We both talk about really thriving in life rather than surviving. So Sara, do you want to introduce yourself?
So I run a company called the Southey Way, which is basically I'm not just a personal trainer. I do help people thrive, not just survive. So hence the catchphrase that both Melanie and I have. It's very important, I think, to not just stay in what we think is our normal routine and just get out and live our lives a little bit more. And I help people do that by an individual approach to their whole health and well-being. So not just the fitness side, but also the emotional and mental side as well. So anything that affects your ability to thrive, I can help you with it.
Thank you, Sara. And just a little bit about the practicalities of this webinar. So it is being recorded, so we have got everyone on mute and the video off, but please do ask questions via the chat box. And once each of us have done our bit, there'll also be room for questions there. And if you are calling in, I don't think we've got anyone calling in at the moment, but feel free to email any questions afterwards. And one of the things I was going to say is that both Sara and I have the approach of there isn't one right way to thriving. Is that, you know, we're all different personalities, we will have different work situations, different, you know, home situations, and also different phases of our life and what we need to thrive. So it's bearing that in mind as we go through the sessions. And I'm going to very briefly talk about what's the difference between thriving and surviving and thinking about that for yourself. Sara's going to talk about your health and well-being. And I like on her presentation, she got the expression about little wins, big difference. And I really like that idea. And also then looking at your plan and your motivation and your why, that helps you to keep going. And then I'm going to talk about your zone of optimal performance and what's within your control and your next steps. And we want this to be as practical as possible. So first of all, it is looking at what does thriving mean to you? And it's going to mean different things to different people. And I always like looking up words in the dictionary. And in the dictionary, it talks about thriving is about flourishing. It's about growing, developing. And it's about progressing towards our goals despite our circumstances. Because I think we can often think we thrive when everything's perfect, but it's actually how do we thrive even if we've got challenges in our lives. And I have some chronic health conditions, and that's really taught me to thrive no matter what. But you know, we're only human. Sometimes it's very challenging. And so just think about what is it, you know, what does it mean to thrive for yourself? So while you're kind of pondering that, I'm going to hand over to Sara, and I'm going to stop sharing. She's going to share her presentation, and then we're going to hear from Sara. Over to you, Sara.
Oh, superb. Okay, so like I said, I'm Sara from the Southey Way. Just a little bit of a recap of this picture, obviously, is all about believing. It's believing in yourself, hence why I'm pointing at me, a little bit of a laughy jokey. I tend to have a photo shoot and then change my look completely. So I'm not that out of date, just had my hair cut. So it's all about living as much and as well as we possibly can. And that's what I help people do. So a lot of the time it's our mental attitude to how we're thriving that can make a huge difference. But the physicality can't be separated from that mental and emotional health as well. So I kind of cover it all. So moving onto what we're actually going to do, I just want you to think about the impact of your health on everything that you do. So just have a little browse in your head about these questions. How does your health affect you, your business, your relationships, and your personal life? And who is in control of that? Because quite often our ability to thrive is completely down to the responsibility that we take for our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. So lots of things can impact how we feel, but it's what we do about that that can help us thrive. So I'm used to a kind of interactive kind of audience. So since we're all off video, I can't see your faces. Please make yourself known in the chat. There is going to be an interactive part of this. It's not just sitting down, listening to me blurb on. So my first question is, how important are you? And I would really like you to use that chat box right now and tell me all the things that you do in a day, your responsibilities. Who do you look after? What do you do? How do you live your life? Anything in that chat box that can help me and feed back to me what you're actually doing in your day-to-day lives. Kids, home, business, family life, doing the shopping, running around on the errands, doing the school run. Yes. Oh, there's a lot of lots of juggling, spinning plates. We've all had that feeling of so many balls in the air and we're trying to keep them all up in the air. Oh, I love this. There's people that have been on here already. Elderly parents. That is, they call it the sandwich years, don't they? When you're looking after the kids and you're looking after the parents.
Very challenging times, yeah.
It is very challenging times. So looking at these lists going through, thank you very much for contributing. I want you to think about all these things in your life, and I know a couple of you have mentioned it already. I want you to just think about what happens when you are not working properly, as in you're not thriving and you're not doing as well as you possibly could be. If you're ill, or you're injured, or you're overwhelmed, all these things that mean that we're not thriving in our lives, what happens to all those things that you've already listed? Who does them? What happens? Generally speaking, all those balls that are in the air come crashing down. Those plates that have been spinning, they come crashing down. And actually, because we're brought up to think about looking after ourselves as being selfish, we tend to put all those other things first and neglect ourselves. And I would like to say that we are the most important person in our lives, so that we can go out and do all those things that we need to do, that we want to do, that we want to help people, we want to work, we want to bring in the money, we want to bring in the nurturing and the caring for the elderly relatives, caring for the children, looking after the pets, doing all the things. If we're not looking after ourselves first, all those plates start to wobble and we can't do our best. So it's not selfish to look after yourself. How to be important when you're retired. So it's very important to make that space to look after your health and well-being. So when you think about your health, most people will think about fitness and that kind of stuff. But actually, there's a foundation. And this is my health and well-being pyramid. So at the very foundation is sleep. And if you are not sleeping as well as you possibly can, you need to be addressing that before anything else. None of this superfoods, magic moments, you know, the marketing around health and well-being is crazy. This is kind of like the stack of where you could look after yourself so that you can look after other people and you can lose those feelings of guilt. I just saw the guilt word appear in the chat. Your sleep is very important. Your mental health comes next, along with your physical health, which is more about moving and living your life as opposed to set exercise times. How you feed yourself is really important because that can affect your physical well-being and your mental well-being. They say your gut is part and parcel of the connection in your brain. They call it your second brain. So it's really important that we nurture that. Then comes the exercise. Who would have thought a fitness professional saying exercise is like one of the smallest bits? But if you think about it, it's only half an hour out of your whole 24 hours. And then the other, I would just like to incorporate all the things like superfoods, supplements, those kind of things that you are marketed at, that you have to spend money on. None of these other things you should have to spend a huge amount of money on. It should all be about you looking after you and taking that responsibility. So I'd just like to ask you 2 questions. How much are you thriving in each of these areas? So ignore the other. In those 5 areas, I'd like you to score yourself out of 10. And then I want you to think about what one thing, that tiny little thing that you could do in one or any of those areas. If you're easily overwhelmed, I would just pick one and just make one change in one of the areas. Trust me, it will make a huge difference in your life. So that tiny little change will make a big difference, and it will get you keeping the control with you, not being pulled from pillar to post, making those small little changes. Any questions on that little bit? Meal planning. Having a plan. Oh my goodness, I do love a little bit of a plan. Here we go. Somebody's read my mind. So what is your plan? There's only one person that can help you thrive, and that is you. You are in charge. You are responsible. And asking these questions of yourself, once you've decided on your one thing, the tiny little change that you're going to make, why are you going to make it? What is it going to look like? How is it going to happen in your life? Where is it going to take place, and when? We all know these who, what, why, where, and how questions. They come up an awful lot in any kind of coaching and learning environment. But putting those questions on yourself is huge. I love all this feedback. Going to bed half an hour earlier every week. Do you know what? Consistency is, I don't like saying king, it's queen. It's there. Consistency with any kind of habit that you make. So these are just a few little questions that you can ask yourself when you're looking at making those one little changes in those 5 areas. It's important that you do look at these questions. So if you want to, you can just take a little screenshot of this or a photo with your phone so that you can come back to it on your action point. And make sure that you have addressed some of these questions, because one of the big things that stops people taking action is that they haven't thought through their plan and how it's going to fit in with their life. So it's not a question of me telling you what to do or Melanie telling you what to do. It's a question of you finding out how it works in your life for you as an individual. There's a lot of sleep questions in here. just like to put a big recommendation out for the book called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. I think it should be a textbook for every single person. It's got all the facts and figures on why it is the foundation of everything. I'll put a link in if we want, Melanie, later.
You can send that out with the slides.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
It's the best book in the world. Okay, so this is my foundation for your plan. And one of the biggest things that stops people from making change in their life is their motivation level. Because when you start something, you can be hugely motivated, hugely excited by those changes that you're going to make, seeing those positivity in your life. And then as the days go by and it gets a little bit more challenging, your motivation level can drop. And this is what's going to keep you on track. So it's not all about motivation. It's about you and you taking responsibility. So I don't know whether anybody's heard that phrase. If your agenda isn't strong enough, you'll be living your life to somebody else's agenda. So knowing why you are doing something and creating the routines and the rituals behind that to keep it sustainable and consistent are going to keep you on track when life is pulling you in different directions. And the other part on this foundation is to set your goals, make them, they can be as big as you like, but break them down into those small, easy wins, and then enjoy that journey and celebrate every single achievement, no matter how small it is, because the brain loves positivity. And if you can teach it to look for positive, it will look for more positive. And it's kind of like a snowball effect. Movement breeds movement. It's awesome. So, what one action will you take to thrive today, tomorrow, and in the future? And I'd really love for you to be able to state in the chat the one change that you could make really, really easily right now, today, because it's all very well listening to Melanie and I talk about how you can thrive and the differences and the changes you can make. But unless you take some action, nothing's going to change. So whether that's an emotional connection, a mental connection, a physical connection, all those actions will change how much you are thriving. And if you can move on that scale, on that pyramid, from maybe a 5 to a 6 or a 3 to a 4 or even a 1 to a 2, that is huge for you as an individual. Love it. So what happens next? I want you to commit to your action. If you haven't already, post something in the chat and know where you're going to get that support from. I'm here. I'm all over social media. It's at the Southey Way on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. You look on the Southey Way, Sara, and you can follow me for my stories through this link, so that it's kind of like my newsletter, but it's basically stories to help people thrive. So that's me in a nutshell, Melanie.
Thank you so much. Well, I do love is your enthusiasm. That's always come through right from the first time I met you. And I'm sure you're incredibly supportive and motivating to your clients. So, any questions for Sara before I have mine? I know people have kind of been saying some things here. I just hear somebody saying, Pete and I literally started this last night, planning. Working together means that homework blends together and can get overwhelming. So true. We're creating a plan which incorporates both to factor in all the spinning plates, which is great. Any questions before we move on? Any questions in the chat box? So and what we will do is the video is going to be edited, and then we will email you all with the video, but also with a copy of the slides. So somebody has asked is, how do you keep motivated, Sara?
How do you keep, it's your why. If you've got a strong purpose, if you know why you want to do something, and you've bought into it deep down in your soul, it's much easier to keep those habits going when life gets hard. If you truly believe that this is going to change your life, you will move heaven and earth to make those changes, even when you're being pulled from pillar to post. Life is hard, running a business is hard. I have 2 teenagers, a husband running 2 businesses, 4 spaniels. I literally could lose the plot quite easily. But what I do with the Southey Way is my purpose. It's my why. It's what enables me personally to thrive. And so it's very easy to be able to create that space in my life to make sure that that happens. And everything that I do means that I look after myself so that I can carry on doing my purpose. So if you can find your why and build it so that it's so strong that it's a non-negotiable, then you don't need motivation. You just believe in yourself. That t-shirt again, that whole believing in yourself is so vital.
And we've got a lovely testimonial from Amanda Burke that says, Sarah has changed everything for me, got me off diets. I speak to myself so differently, and that for me has been the crux. Everything else is changing from just that. Would I speak to anyone else in a way that I speak to myself? No, of course I would not. And that really resonates with me as well, in terms of mastering your inner critic. And somebody has talked about anxiety and stress from work causes morning wakefulness, and people have mentioned that. When I come to my session, I'll weave that in as well. So it looks like there's no more questions at the moment, Sarah.
Can I just say on that anxiety and the stress, so much of it is in our heads, but our physicality can affect what is going on in our heads. So for instance, if there's a situation that has got too big or too overwhelming, moving your body physically can help unblock the mental and emotional anxiety and stress. So even if it is just getting up and going up and down the stairs, or if you're up to it, go for a walk outside. And I call them my angry walks, when I'm just kind of like, ah! I will go and I will walk hard, and that will release, because movement will promote the blood flow through the brain, and it will release some of those blocks. Could help.
And I was at a conference about health and well-being a couple of years ago, and somebody carrying out research, and they had shown that even 5 minutes walking outside starts to have an impact on your sense of well-being. So it doesn't take much to actually start to change things. So.
Literally 5 minutes. Everybody thinks exercise has got to be an hour or 30 minutes. If you did 5 minutes 10 times a day, how amazing would that be?
Yeah.
I've just seen Sarah Fletcher's motion equals emotion. I love it.
Yes. What I'm going to talk about is that in order to thrive is about being in the zone of optimal performance. And so I'm going to show you on a model about what I mean about the zone of optimal performance. And why I'm going to share this is that I often, when I'm working in organizations, is that people are often very confused about the difference between stress and pressure. And I get people saying to me, yes, but Melanie, I need stress to kind of motivate me and to kind of energize me. Or they have the kind of attitude of, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. And so this model shows what the difference between stress and pressure. So with this model is that what we're looking at is there's kind of increasing demands and pressure. So if we don't have enough demands on ourselves, is we can feel very understimulated, bored and demotivated. And it could be that you've been doing, you're very busy at work, but actually you could do the job in your sleep and you're feeling really demotivated. I had a new coaching client a couple of years ago who's running a very successful business, but he said, I'm there, Melanie. He said, I'm so bored. I need a new challenge. people over the last year, you know, if anybody was furloughed, is that unless you suddenly started painting the house or learning a new language, you're likely to have ended up in that zone. And so too little demands, we can end up bored, demotivated, etc. As the demands increase, is that we get to this zone of optimal performance where there's a right level of demands and pressure. And this is where we feel energized, we're motivated, we're stretched but we're not strained, we're excited about the day ahead. And this is really when we're thriving, is that and this zone will vary from people to people. It also will vary at different points of our lives as to how big this zone is. And I was running a workshop at the beginning of this year, and and for those of us in the UK, we were into our third lockdown, and somebody made the comment when I shared this model. They said, Melanie, do you think this zone of optimal performance has got smaller during this pandemic? And I said, I think that's a really good observation, is that because there were so many more pressures on us, so much uncertainty, and also there weren't necessarily the things that we would usually do to help us to stay in the zone. And so it was much easier to tip into the threat response and then feeling stressed. And it's watching when you start to get near to this, the top of the zone of optimal performance, because then it doesn't take much to tip you over. It's very easy to, you know, that you have a few sleepless nights, or suddenly, you know, your elderly parents or your young children are sick, or if you're, you know, commuting to work again, suddenly there's roadworks on your journey and it's going to throw everything into your journey to work into chaos. Is then it can tip you into that threat response. And once we're stressed and strained and we're overwhelmed, is that our brain isn't operating effectively. And I will send a link when I send a link to this webinar recording of another one where I talk in more detail about the brain's threat response. Because once we go into the threat response and we're being, cortisol is going through our system, which is a stress hormone, we become very tunnel visioned. It's very hard to remember things, to retrieve information. We become much less effective as well at work, which leads to even more stress. And it affects our sleep as well. So loads of people have made comments about sleep in the chat box, is that when we're in the zone of optimal performance, we will be sleeping far more, it's kind of far deeper sleep, as well as hopefully sleeping for a longer period of time and less interruption to our sleep. And that helps us to keep us into that zone of optimal performance. So what I'd like to do is run a very quick poll about how you are right now. So we've got 26 of the people, 26% saying they're in the zone of optimal performance. Great. So we're going to talk about actually what you need to do. Is actually we've got 37% who are in that demotivated. And somebody was kind of saying about low demands, lack of contact with other people, which, you know, is also can be, you know, can lead you to enter that zone. And we've also got 37% of people who are in that overwhelmed stress threat response. So, and what might well happen is that you go between the different zones. So I was running some programs on resilience at work for a pharmaceutical research company a couple of years ago. And what people were saying was that for some of them, where they were working on projects, is that when they were immersed in the project, they were into the stress and the overwhelm. And then either at the end of a project or at different parts of the project, they then go into the understimulated. But they said they never felt like they were in a zone of optimal performance. I'm pleased to say in the second part of the program, there were more people into that zone of optimal performance. So, and somebody's already kind of said that they're in one or the other. So think about either if you're in the zone of optimal performance, or you will have been there at some point in the past, is think about what is it like for you? How does it feel? How do you behave what do you look and sound like to other people? And certainly I know that when I'm in the zone, is that even though I might be very busy, is at the end of the day and the end of the week, I end it feeling energized rather than exhausted, because my brain is in reward response. I've got dopamine going through my body and serotonin rather than the cortisol. And so I'm in a kind of very different place. So it's quite important to kind of connect with what is it like, so you can spot really quickly when you start to go out of that zone. So for me, because I really practice what I preach, and feel very kind of passionately about it, is that I can spot very quickly. So I go for an early morning walk, very early, that kind of aids my sleep, because evidently it resets your clock. But I also often go for a quick walk, a much shorter walk after lunch, to just kind of give me a little kind of pep up. And I was doing that the other day, and I was walking along by the canal, and I noticed when I had my head down, usually it means I'm having negative thoughts. And I was there was loads of kind of angst about, a program I'm launching about my mum's health, various, different things of going on. And I suddenly thought, wow, okay, let's just come into the here and now. And I was kind of going to, right, I'm going to do mindful walks. Look out for a certain color, or look out for the flowers, or look out for the birds. That brings me into the here and now. And then it kind of energizes me, and then I can come back, and if I need to look at the things that were on my mind, I can do that having been refreshed, and I can do that in a calm and rational way. So it's well worth being in tune with what that zone looks and feels like, so that you can spot when you go off center and come back quickly and do something to bring yourself back. So what I'd like you to do is share in the chat box, what actions and activities can you take, or do you use, to help you to get into and stay in that zone? So please do share in the chat box. I've got a whole morning routine that I do that helps me to really, I've mentioned earlier on, I have some chronic health issues, and so it helps me to thrive and be at my best, so I can give my best to my clients, to my family, etc., friends, whoever else it might be. So any kind of suggestions? Is that I'm not getting, I don't know if anyone.
Yeah.
So swimming, somebody's saying swimming, really important. I don't know whether that was open air swimming, or whatever they call it, open water swimming. People talking walking the dogs. So when I'm on my early morning walk, most other people walking their dogs, and I would think, there's me, I just walk myself. So meditation, really important. I'm a Buddhist. I have a morning practice and an evening practice. Yoga, Pilates. I'm also into Pilates as well. Getting out in nature for a walk. For me, nature has really helped to sustain me over this last kind of 18 months. So somebody's saying doing household chores, doing assignments and activities during online classes. Oh, that's interesting. So so they're listening, but they're also doing chores. I quite like that, multitasking. It's a bit like I listen to inspiring podcasts when I'm doing my Pilates in the morning, but when I'm walking, I just immerse myself in nature rather than being listening. The garden, watching the birds, yoga, singing, great. And someone else saying, I feel very much like I need a plan for my whole day ahead. I'm trying to change a lifetime for being stuck. So it really needs a replanning to change how I function. And I think go to what Sara was saying, is set yourself up for success. I always say this to my clients, is that change one thing at a time. So that it feels manageable. Then you can kind of say, yes, I've mastered that, I've got that into my routine, and then you can add in other things. Because if you try to change too much at one time, it can feel overwhelming, and you end up kind of giving up. So planning your day helps definitely. And also planning your day means that your brain can quickly you could just go to your list and go, right, this is what's next, tick it off once it's done. And you don't have to be wasting good thinking time trying to work out what to do next. And even if that is things outside of work as well. So I want to go on now into other things that help you to thrive. And this model you may have come across before. It's from Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's been around for a long time, but very effective book. And I'm always sharing this model with clients, particularly clients, I have to say, working in organizations, because there's often a lot of things that are in their circle of concern, but they can do nothing about. So we all have things that are in our circle of concern that impact on us, but we can do nothing about. So we'll all be going through a pandemic. Huge impact on life, nothing we can do about it. Is that, whatever your views on Brexit, if you're in the UK, it's having an impact. One of my clients is an engineering manufacturing business, and I was talking to the head of operations, who also looks after the procurement team, and he said, we've got to the stage where we just laugh at all the obstacles we're facing. We're trying to get supplies from overseas, and then the Suez Canal was blocked for however many days, and actually is that's quite a healthy response, because otherwise you can end up getting very stressed about all the things that are outside, are in your circle of concern. It also might be things in your family. So my mum's been diagnosed with triple dementia last year, is great concern, has an impact on our lives, but there's not a lot we can do to change that diagnosis and her health. So if we spend a lot of time thinking about our circle of concern, we're either going to end up very frustrated or angry about what's going on, or we'll end up very anxious, worried about it, demotivated, depressed. So whereas if we come into our circle of influence, which starts with our thoughts and our beliefs, which might be our thoughts about the situation that we're facing. So when my mum was, when I knew and that there was something with my wrong with my mum quite some time ago. And first of all, it was kind of head in hands. I don't want to have to face this. We've gone through so much with her health and my father's before he died. And then the next day, actually, I was doing my Buddhist practice, and I thought, you know what, I'm determined we're all going to thrive, and she's going to thrive. We've had very rocky times, and there's still lots of challenges we have, but my determination, my thoughts, my intention is that we will find ways to thrive. And so your thoughts and your beliefs then affect how your mood and your emotion then affects your behavior and your actions, and your communication. So when we focus on our circle of influence, then we feel motivated. We feel in charge of our lives. And somebody, I think it was Amanda, was saying earlier on about she's been working with Sara and the positive influence, but the big difference was what's going on up in her head and how she speaks to herself. And I wrote, I'm just grabbing a copy here, a book on master your inner critic, release your inner wisdom. And so that once we are kind to ourselves, is, I'm often saying to people, is about really having compassion for themselves, is that then we feel in a very different place and we're able to take action and help others. So somebody has said, I often find I create an unachievable to-do list, which leaves me feeling demoralized at the end of the day, trying to reduce the number of things I put on it. And I think that's really important. I'm writing a 2-part newsletter. The second part is going to be in July. So I'll send a link with the webinar recording so you can sign up for it if you don't receive it already, which is about working smarter rather than harder. Is that one is about thinking about what is your top priority. Is also in the second one, I'm talking about having buffers. Is that rather than kind of thinking, oh, well, that only take half an hour. I was coaching a client the other day who's head of operations in a different organization. She was saying, right, before I go on holiday, I've got these tasks. And I said, so how much you know, how long would that take? And she said, half an hour. I said, how long will it really take? Well, actually, probably an hour. So, you know, double what you think. And then if things don't take as long, is you've got extra time to get on. And so I have a list that is for maybe my month, and then for my week, and then for my day. And my day is much, much smaller. And then I can bring in, when there's spare time, is you can bring in and put other things on that list. And you feel so much better that you will work more effectively through your list and then have time to do additional things. And I'm coaching 2 people who they are partners in running their own accountancy business. And sometimes they can kind of, you know, start to feel overwhelmed. Is that, you know, and I say, it's listen to what's going on in your head. If you're kind of saying, well, I'll never get through everything, is you're setting yourself up for failure, because you're then in that threat response. So taking a deep breath is coming into the here and now in order to be able to get into that zone of optimal performance and then think more clearly. So there are lots of different things that you can do. And as a number of people said about anxiety, there's a really good app that I recommend, and a lot of my clients are using, which is called the Thought Diary app. And I'll send the link, because if you put Thought Diary app, there is a lot of different ones that come up. But this one is based on CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. It's really good at managing those anxious thoughts. So I will put that in the email that I send you. Is that it's being able to, so I encourage people to, you know, maybe write a journal in the morning, check in with themselves. I have a mood map to help people check in with themselves at the beginning of the morning. Also, these apps can help you to do that as well. So that, and if you notice that you kind of go down as the day goes on, that will be because your energy levels are going down. Is set a timer to check in with yourself, you know, maybe it's after lunch or midway through the afternoon, so that it goes off, you check in with yourself, is that you do some things that bring you into the here and now. So we've gone through a lot. I was going to talk a bit about emotional intelligence, which is really kind of sums up everything that I do. And the definition of emotional intelligence is the ability to understand, use and manage your own emotions in a positive way, to relieve stress, communicate effectively, empathize with others, overcome challenges and diffuse conflict. And who doesn't need that in your life? But I'm not going to kind of say, because I'd rather open it up for questions. So I think people have been making comments, and some about being overly optimistic. So please do write any comments in the chat box, either for myself or for Sara. Just as you're doing, because I know it takes time for people to write their comments, it's just as a summary, is that I was talking about, you know, what does thriving mean for you rather than merely surviving, because I think a lot of people can say to me, actually, I'm very resilient, Melanie, and actually what that means is they're surviving, but they're not really thriving in life. Sara talked about that health pyramid, and she said at the bottom is sleep, and absolutely important. And she talked about a book. We'll send a link to that book. I also recommend Dr. Guy Meadows' The Sleep Book, which is also, and he has a sleep school, which is also very effective in not just understanding about why sleep is important, but actually taking you through a program to help improve your sleep. She also talked about your motivation and your why, so important. You know, for me, is that the times when I've taken big action, like when I started doing Pilates, I had a very big why, because I had a big back problem, and I'd lost out on going on holiday. Insurance hadn't paid out. I thought, never want to go through that again, and I want to sort out my back. That was my big why. And then in the moment I started to learn, Pilates, is that I started to do it every day. And now I do it kind of 4 or 5 times a week. And and also the little wins and the big difference. And I've been talking about the zone of optimal performance and what is within your circle of influence. Just finally, if you've enjoyed this, is that do register with my website. It's inspiretransmotion.co.uk, where it says sign up for the newsletter. You can sign up for my monthly coaching newsletter, Melanie's Monday Motivational Messages, and I also get news of my free webinars. And I also offer free coaching audits, and I have an 8-week course called Being and Doing. So nobody's coming up with any other questions. So
well, I did think there was one in there that really resonates with me, and that's planning your me time.
Yes.
And that observation, a couple of people have said they don't plan their own time. We would plan our work, we plan our to-do list, you know, whether it's overly optimistic or not, but prioritizing our own health and enabling that to be part of our plan in our day-to-day routine is absolutely, then it's non-negotiable. Then you do it. If you put that priority on as much as you would a client appointment.
I totally agree. And it's something that I do. And also when I kind of am going to stay with family or I'm going on holiday with other people, they know that I do these various different things, and they're kind of they either join me or, you know, they're very understanding of it. Because they know that I practice what I preach. So it really is important. I remember I was running a course, actually it was about managing challenging interactions at work. And there was one working mother, and she said, I get up 10 minutes before the rest of the family and before my world goes mad, so that I have that 10 minutes of serenity. And then I kind of in a good place to deal with my family, you know, my young children, before they get off to school, I go off to work. So it's sometimes simple things can make a huge difference. And I've always really kind of struck with me that that's what she did to actually help her to thrive in her family life.
And I think it's really important to find your own way. There's a lot of self-help books out there. The big one that's going around, you know, the Miracle Morning, the Get Up Early. I tried it. I was not thriving in that routine at all. For me, what happens is I get super stressed and super tired. So it was not for me, even though as a concept, it's a great idea because I am a night owl. It was completely wrong for me. And I felt really bad when I started doing it, because I'm like, well, something must be wrong with me because this is not working. You know, everybody's preaching it, but it's not working for me. Actually, believing in myself and knowing how I work has enabled me to go, you know what, my time for me is between 2 and 3 in the afternoon. Find your own way, experiment, have a play, and see what works for you and your lifestyle. So listen to all the ideas, try them out, but don't panic if it doesn't work for you. There'll be another thing that does.
And I think, Sarah, you work, it's the same way as me. Is I'm always asking, clients when they're going to take some action. When's the best time for you? You know, given everything that's going on in your life. My brother is definitely a night owl, and he'll go for a run at 9 o'clock at night. I was like, I'm just about to go to bed then. But that's right for him. Now, somebody has said, I had a lovely day out at the weekend. I feel guilty that I haven't got anything done. I'm trying to talk to myself the same I would to my best friend. And I think it's that it also comes back to you can, take action to master your inner critic, but it also comes back to what Sarah talked about, your why. Is that because if your lovely day out at the weekend has really refreshed you, that's going to, have such a positive impact on the rest of your working week. And in my Being and Doing course, there's you get videos in the on Monday, then on the Wednesdays you get wonderful Wednesday input, and we have called Fantastic Fridays, and part of that is to learning a different technique to review the week, but also looking at the weekend and looking at how are you going to have a weekend that is refreshing you, supporting you, energizing you, or enabling you to relax, whatever it is that you need, to actually then help you to have a great week ahead. So I think that it is, you know, it's working on your why and how it's going to benefit you, as well as mastering your inner critic. Someone says, I'm an early morning riser anyway, so the morning miracle, so ready morning miracle, but actually now have decided to wake up at 5 a.m. and love that quiet time when it's just me and the birds tweeting, and I just take time out to stay silent, and I love this time. So yeah, it's great. It's really, really good. I'm a morning person, but actually some other people's morning routines I wouldn't want to do. I think I have seen the miracle morning. It's not for me. I do my own miracle morning. Find one that's going to suit you. So, other people saying already subscribed. So I know there are lots of people who know me who subscribed already, but feel free, everybody else too, and I'll send a link. So we're nearly there. I always like to finish on time. We've got just a couple of minutes. So we will edit this video and that will take a couple of days. We will then email you the video recording, also the slides, any links to some of the books that we've mentioned, and to our websites. And that, I think, is it. Sarah, any final words of wisdom?
Don't forget to take action on the one thing that resonated with you.
Thank you. Yes. And take that action within the next 24 hours. And think about when in that next 24 hours is going to be helpful for you.